Hi and welcome. In today's episode, I'm speaking to someone who is truly inspiring. We have Janine Scarff, our sober sidekick. Janine is trained as a sobriety coach and helps people rethink their relationship with alcohol, whether that means cutting down, taking a break, or quitting altogether. With nearly 7 years sobriety under her belt, Janine brings not only a professional insight, but a deep passion to her work. Her journey has been transformational and she's passionate about breaking the stigma around alcohol struggles. So, welcome, Janine. Thanks for
Hello,
joining
thank you for
me.
having me.
You're very welcome. So, I'll just give you a little brief intro there, but if you would like to tell me a little more about you and your business, perhaps how you got started, that'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as you said, I'm Janine. Um, so how I got started was basically through my own sobriety. So, as you said, 7 years ago, I removed alcohol from my life. Obviously, that point 7 years ago was kind of the culmination of several years and a whole process that I went through to make that decision. And as part of that, I just felt there was a gap, particularly 7 years ago. There is a bit more available now in terms of support for people, and that there's the black and white thinking around alcohol just didn't help me for sure, and I don't think help other people to get help or to realise that that maybe their drinking's a problem. For me, it was like, well, I'm not an alcoholic, so I must be okay because there's this black and white. You either are or you aren't. Whereas in my view, there's a whole spectrum, and I didn't want to carry on down that road. So that was kind of where the inspiration came from. And I retrained in 2021 whilst I was furloughed during COVID. But it took me quite a long time to kind of launch it. I did it on the side. I did it, doing lots of volunteering and helping people in Facebook groups. But it took me until March this year to really go, do you know what? This is what I want to do. This is what lights me up. This is what I'm going to kind of really go for.
Yeah, and I think that's really interesting, like you're saying, with your own sober journey and not having to have that rock bottom and
Mm.
how we can be a little transient between our drinking. Is there any, when you think about drinking, are we saying about that spectrum as well? Do you have
Mm.
certain types of clients? Is there, obviously, then you're going to have different types of clients. So how does that work?
Yeah, so I tend to attract, I don't specifically only work with women, but I tend to attract women. And it tends to be, I work with grey area drinkers, and I think um, most or all sobriety coaches will say they don't work with dependent drinkers because it's outside of my scope of practice and it wouldn't be safe. So obviously I have things in place to make sure that we keep everybody safe. So yeah, it's mostly kind of grey area drinkers. I think what I do, and I've had this feedback that's a bit different, is that I'm not, really, well, you've got to stop, or there's not only one path. My path was that I wanted and needed to not drink alcohol again, but that might not be the same for everybody. And I think people can have struggles for all kinds of different reasons. And that's why I call myself sober curious coastal, because I want people to get curious, like just be aware of it. Just um kind of be aware of how alcohol can creep in when other things in life, because it's so easily done, for any number of reasons. You might be stressed, you might be having difficulties at work or in home, and before you know, a glass of wine becomes two, becomes a bottle, becomes every night. um so I've gone off on a tangent there, but yes, my kind of customer base does tend to be kind of women between about 30 to 50 who have just got to a point where they think, do you know what? Alcohol is not helping me live my best life. And
Mm.
alcohol's just like, it's not even really about the alcohol. It's about removing the alcohol or dealing with that so you can flourish into all the other ways, because alcohol just holds you back. It's just kind of like putting a great big fire blanket on your life. That's how I view it anyway.
Yeah, it's quite interesting because with regards to alcohol, and you say about grey area drinking, I mean, what does that mean when you say grey area? So other people can perhaps have an understanding of how their drinking might be can maybe considered grey area, or how that kind of creeps into day to day.
Oh, sorry, you froze for a minute there. So yes, grey area drinkers, I think that comes up a lot because it's a term that's used, but maybe isn't quite so well understood. I have got an official thing somewhere, so I might not remember it quite so eloquently, but basically anybody who falls between kind of dependent drinking, so physical dependency, and what you would say a normal drinker. I'm not really sure what a normal drinker is, to be honest, but so a grey area where you're not going to need to have a medical detox, you're not going to be dangerous to stop drinking alcohol, but you're still drinking at increased risk, so above the government guidelines of unit. I mean, who tells the truth on those, right? I'm not sure the data on that. I also think it's good to not get hung. We do use the thing of grey area drinkers, but I do think it's good to not get hung on amounts, because I think someone could still be drinking within maybe the guidelines, but actually alcohol still have a detrimental impact on their life if you're using it as a coping mechanism, or, you know, in other ways. Yes, of course, it's less, you know, not as bad for you, but I don't think it's helpful to always think in terms of volume, unless you're dealing with dependency, obviously, when that becomes more important.
Yeah, and I think it is interesting. And I like with my own journey with alcohol. I mean, I've been sober now for almost 3 years, and that was kind of a transition into it after lockdown. Going into lockdown, March 2020, the sun was shining and I was drinking every day. And it wasn't drinking to excess, it was a cold beer because the sun was shining. It was a gin and tonic. It wasn't problematic, but it was daily. And then it was like, okay, I need to wait until 12 o'clock because it's lunchtime and then I'll have a drink. And then I was like, oh, okay, maybe I should push it back till 5. And then I was like itching to have a drink. So I realized that my relationship to drink had changed. And then coming out of lockdown in the August, going back to work full time, it was just the lethargy, yeah.
Lethargy.
Lethargy, there you go. I'm thinking about how you spell it. Feeling bloated, not feeling focused. Obviously, I just started my own business, so I wasn't really focused with that, and just didn't feel the benefits. And I realized that it had become more problematic because I was drinking each day, and me then having to put those kind of like parameters on, and that didn't settle very easy with me. So I then started having periods of abstinence where it'd be like 6 months, 8 months, and then it'd be someone's birthday and it'd be Christmas. Oh, I'll just have a drink because it's that. And then it just became that just because drinking, oh, just because we're going out, just because I'm having something to eat. And I just got fed up with it. And it was that was my kind of jump start really for me. Then think, you know what, I'm doing it for the sake of it. I'm not going to do it anymore. And I think as I've become kind of slightly older, approaching perimenopause, menopausal age, and wanting to be the best version of me and how I wanted to turn up, and alcohol wasn't featuring that for myself. I mean, how would you say, if you don't mind sharing, like how your journey was with alcohol? I'd be interested to know, like, with your own journey, with how that kind of manifested.
Yeah, sure. I think yours is really interesting, and I think having those periods of abstinence actually enables you to view it more clearly, doesn't it? I think sometimes you can't really take the rose tinted glasses off to see what's going on with your drinking when you are drinking. So I think I'm a big fan of breaks, even if people go back to it, because it gives you that clarity. And I remember through COVID, and I'm being so grateful that I wasn't still drinking, because I would have got myself in all kinds of trouble if I'd have still been drinking and working from home. That would not have worked. That would not have gone well. So yeah, I'm super grateful that I was a few years in before that happened. But so my journey to sobriety was, I suppose, quite a long one. So I had always leaned on alcohol. You know, I was a really shy young woman. I haven't been diagnosed, but most likely neurodiverse. And I remember just having my first drink at about 14 at a party and thinking, oh my God, like I feel amazing, like I'm confident. And I was like, this is magic, like I need. So whilst it didn't become problematic immediately, I think that kind of reaction to it was a bit of a precursor to maybe it wasn't going to be the healthiest relationship ever. And, you know, life bumbled along, but it became a problem for me Um, did it? I'm not sure it ever. I think it had all been a problem, but there were things that kind of exacerbated it, and I got to a point where I stopped believing my own BS about it, and realised that actually, about 2 years before I stopped drinking, I realised that my life would be better without alcohol. Before that, I had been through the similar to you. Oh well, I'll just drink um, twice a week, or oh, I'll just drink on weekends. You know, all that kind of negotiating with myself because I didn't think that life without alcohol could be positive. So it took me a long time to realise that actually my daily drinking was not healthy. Um, so after about so there was sorry after when I came to that realization, it took me a good couple of years to actually stop. There was some I did go to AA a couple of times. To be honest, that you know, I know it works for lots of people and that's cool. For me, I just walked out there and thought I'm not that bad, and I walked out there and bought a bottle of wine. So clearly didn't work for me and didn't feel the right fit for me. What did work for me was finding like Facebook communities and finding kind of inspiration that sobriety could be like a happy choice and not a sad consequence. So I suppose I needed to see that modeled, that other people were going, oh hey, I stopped drinking and it's really great, which is why I talk about it so much, because I know what a difference it made to me to hear people saying that. So I want to share that with other people that might be, because there's a lot of shame, right, around. I felt really, really shameful that I had my shit in order in every other, sorry, I'm for swearing, in every other aspect of my life. But this one thing, I just could not get a grip on it. Just couldn't, you know, whatever rules I put in place, I would find a reason to break them. Because, you know, that's easy to do, isn't it? Especially when I was a single parent at the time. So really easy to just go, oh, hey, okay, well, it's a Wednesday, but it's raining, so guess I'll have some wine.
Yeah. And I think then that's it, isn't it? And I think as women, we do kind of beat ourselves up as to being all singing or dancing. And if we don't turn up a certain way, and that kind of fear, whether it's being judged, but that's not judged by others, just ourselves. I think we're our own worst enemy in that respect, where we feel as though we are failing. And we don't give ourselves enough credit for some of the stuff that, you know, that we do have to carry as well, especially like you're saying, as being a single parent as well. I'm a single parent, and that kind of being scrutinized, but I think we do it more so ourselds as well. But it's like you're saying, it's a really interesting journey that you've had. And like you're saying, with COVID, it is amazing that obviously to then go through sobriety and continue through something as so life-changing as lockdown is pretty tremendous as well. So all hats off, saluting you to that, because it was such a challenging time. And I think that obviously, yeah. I still think there's elements of that, and obviously, especially with young people and their relationships with alcohol. But yeah, it's an interesting journey. So would you say that obviously, like your kind of, you said and shared about your journey towards sobriety and how that then led you to becoming a sober coach? Do you think it was kind of predestined? Would you say that it's something? Are you someone that's kind of always been passionate about working and supporting people? Is it something that you think you kind of come full circle with? How would you kind of look at that?
Yeah, I think I've always in my heart known and wanted to do something that kind of contributed positively. And I was, you know, when I was a teenager, I was always volunteering and always really kind of community focused. Then kind of life happened. Like I got a job, had my son, you know, and then you're in a job that you know supports yourself, and then it's really hard to think, well, I can't, you know, it got to a point where I thought, well, I can't just start again somewhere else. So I'm kind of here, it pays the bills. And so I suppose that little kind of safety net just kind of carried on, you know, and didn't really, I always knew behind the scenes that there was that nagging feeling of, oh, you know, I really want to do something more meaningful and more rewarding. I mean, don't get wrong, I enjoyed my job. I've worked in sales and commercial roles. I did enjoy them and like the people, but the outcomes weren't quite what I would have wanted. So it just took me quite a long way to get there. And I feel like when I found sobriety, I was like, wow, this is it. This is how I can help people. This is how I can kind of, use those skills. And that's why I wanted to retrain. And I love the coaching. But what I really love as well is I'm just banging on about it all the time. So if you're talking to me in Tesco's, I'll just have a chat with someone, because you just don't know those little ripples and the amounts of people that will come and say to me, oh, I heard you saying such and such, my daughter this, or, it just gives people permission to talk about their stories, because there's too much of everyone just pretending to have their shit together, in my view.
Yeah, very much so. And I think it's quite interesting, isn't it? Because whether it's a kind of carefully created life online, through images, through what people share, people only tend to share the highlights, the good bits. And it's obviously always sharing what you feel comfortable with. And we are looking, when we look in, we are looking at people's lives, and not everyone wants to share the ins and outs. And I get that as well. But it is that kind of like opening up, kind of sharing those, because it gives other people permission to do that. And I think that's quite powerful to be able to do that. And like yourself as a coach, having that kind of lived experience, and then also encouraging others about how they can have that kind of permission to view it differently. And if they want to, then if they are curious and how they can turn up, that's a good way of how they can honor themselves as well.
Yeah, because I genuinely didn't know or kind of realize in my 20s and 30s that alcohol was addictive. I thought it was, I genuinely bought into the whole, well, we will only have a problem if you're an alcoholic. And nobody in my family had had a problem with alcohol or had called themselves an alcoholic. So I just thought, well, that won't be me. I won't have a problem with alcohol, because it's that black and white thinking, not that, well, anybody can become addicted to an addictive substance. Seems obvious, really, but it wasn't to me. So, yeah, I think that needs to be spoken about more.
Yeah, and I think sometimes it kind of like I say, it was like with my own journey, because it was just a case I was just fed up with drinking, and it wasn't a case of having that rock bottom. But it's also then since not drinking and kind of, I suppose when you look at social media, then you look at your feed and how that kind of your algorithm changes, both internally, personally, but also online. Yeah. Then you start seeing all the more information about alcohol and the dangers of alcohol and all of that. And then it's like, oh, why would you choose to do that? And it's that kind of, then I love having the conversations about it. And I like with myself, because I'm vegan as well. And that's another kind of layer to it. And it's not necessarily about preaching, but it's that once your eyes are opened, or you've taken the kind of blindfold off, I find it hard then to go back. And like I say, as a coach, people are coming to you with all different kinds of the different points of their journey as well. So when you're kind of supporting young people, supporting people and women, do you have an element of how their life can change? So is there anything that you'd share about any kind of the journey? I mean, I would say kind of that journey towards joy and kind of joyful living. How do people kind of acknowledge that kind of journey, or how do you take them on that journey?
I think it's kind of different for everybody depending on where they start, obviously, and what their objectives are. Because not everybody I work with wants to give up alcohol completely. They might want to moderate. And I mean, I've seen just really joyful transformations in kind of different elements of the spectrum. I just think that addressing alcohol and being curious about alcohol really does unlock, because it's such a depressant, and it's such a, people do really tend to find, and one of the things that I encourage kind of when I'm going through one of my sort of standard programs is kind of to revisit what gave you joy as a young person, because I think we lose that as we get older. And it's like, because people will often be like, oh, well, what do I do now? Like, bored, my evenings were, going out or drinking. And I would say, well, look back to what you enjoyed as a young person. That will, that's where you'll find your joy, or try something that you've always wanted to try. So it is just it's kind of a becoming what was always meant to be.
I
but
love
that might
that.
have been veiled by alcohol.
I love that, becoming all that you were meant to be.
Yeah, I
Mm.
think it's I genuinely think it's just magic. Like I really do. It's like a massive upgrade. And I didn't realize that when I started. I was just like, well, I'm just going to stop drinking and hopefully I'll lose some weight and maybe I'll feel a bit healthier. But I did genuinely had no idea of the transformational, like fairy godmother-esque transformation that happens in every aspect of your life, because it is just, it touches everything. And you don't, yeah, you just know not to get evangelical about it. You just don't realize that until you've done it, I don't think.
And it is that kind of like, it's that stepping into that, and it just feels like, yeah, do you kind of mirror that? You have so much more clarity, or you feel a little more kind of empowered in some respects, but it comes from a good place. And that's not a preachy place, but it's that kind of like, okay, I can make that decision because you're looking at all aspects of it and coming to that kind of informed decision, whether that's life choices, obviously making those big steps career wise. But how do you, I mean, you spoke about how you encourage people to step into their joy. How do you step into your joy then when you're talking about like that kind of joyful living? How's that turn up for you?
So for me, it's been like I've been sober for 7 years now. So there's been like different phases to it. Um, I think initially there is this wave of joy, relief, kind of once your chemical, your dopamine and your serotonin, everything just calms down. And I'd stopped eating like cherry bakewells by the pack because I was big into sugar. Like I really was. But anyway, you do what you have to do to get through the first couple of months. Um, but it's like you feel, because when you're numbing, you're not just numbing the bad things, you're numbing the good things. And I did a lot of drinking my feelings. So um, I remember walking down my road quite early on in sobriety and literally crying because I was just so joyful. I was like, the birds are singing and just feeling so happy to be alive. Um, and that does subside and things get back to normal. But for me, I think that one of the joyful things is that I trust myself now. Like I can trust myself, whereas I didn't trust myself before because I kept making promises that I wouldn't keep.
Mm.
And Monday morning Janine was a different person to Friday night Janine, who, you know, when you keep breaking that trust with yourself, it really affects your relationship with yourself. And then that trickles out into other parts of your life as well. But I find joy. I find joy in connection. I think I'm naturally a curious person, and I find joy in. I co-run a women's networking group, and I find joy in seeing women find their purpose, women lifting women. Love that. I also very sadly love spreadsheets. I don't know why, but they bring me calm. So that does bring me joy, and I've accepted that I spend too much time on spreadsheets, but whatever. That's one of my quirks. Um, and gardening, I think anything in nature like should be prescribed, shouldn't it? Like gardening and cooking are just really, they feel really wholesome to me.
And it's all that sense of achievement as well, isn't it? Because you can see some of the end results. So even if it is raking the leaves, you can see obviously how it was before and then afterwards, whether it's baking, cooking. And I mean, that's all good for nourishing. It's nourishing your body, but also nourishing your soul, isn't it? So that's really, yeah, self-fulfilling in different ways. Whether it's just appreciating the bird song, sometimes I walk out and I was like, oh, I mean, I don't know the different bird songs, but I know there's definitely different ones there.
Yeah. Yeah, I just think you're like, for me, getting sober wasn't like a magic. In some ways, it was a magic pill, but it's not in everything. You do have to feel your feelings. But there is so much when you're not numbing. There is just so much more joy to be felt. So much more joy to be felt. You do
And
have to
you're
feel the bad things too.
Yeah, yes, and I suppose that kind of then ties me into thinking. So on the flip side of that, when you do have those challenging moments, or when you just feel a little in a funk, what how do you tend to alleviate that, or how do you get that balance?
So I think it's like a process of learning. Like I feel like I had to learn in my late 30s when I got sober what I possibly should have learned in my 20s, which was how do you process uncomfortable emotions? How do you just work through those things? Because I had genuinely just pushed everything down and drunk through it. So I think if you can afford it, therapy is amazing. I had lots of therapy, and that helped me process things. And I think it's just, for me, I got to know myself and then just know what would get me out of a funk. So it might be going for a walk, it might be journaling. I do a lot of journaling, which helps me process my feelings. Writing a list. I love writing lists. I'm not so good doing the things on the list, but writing the lists I love. But I think it's much easier to get out of a funk when you know yourself better and you like yourself. And it's coming from a place of kindness and love. And that's been one of the great joys of sobriety for me. Is, don't get me wrong, I don't love myself all the time, but I have a much better relationship with myself now, and I have my own back, and I care and nurture myself in a way that I never did when I was drinking. So yeah, that has helps me get out of a funk, because we all get into funks, right? It still happens.
Definitely. And it is sometimes that you have an argument with yourself.
Yeah.
But it's recognizing those steps that you can take, and that might look different for other people. It's like I'm always out for a walk. I'm kind of obsessed with hitting my step count every day, but I like that. I like going out and I don't listen to music. I am just literally walking. Try not to go on my phone too much, but it is an opportunity to catch up on things. But then it's kind of like, well, I want to be in the moment. So it is finding those things that do work for you, and then it might be having a little menu of things, mightn't it? So it might be a case of mixing it up a little bit, depending on, might be weather dependent, it might be kind of where you are in the cycle, maybe in the month. I know, I do like going to do exercise, going to the gym, but sometimes I was like, I'm just tired, so I just want to sit. I try not to do Netflix binges anymore, because I think that's that's negatively impacts me. And that's no shade on anybody that does like a Netflix binge either. So
I think what you've described is what I often describe like your sober toolkit.
yeah.
And it might not be, it might just be your well-being tool. It doesn't have to be about sobriety, but
No,
it's
yeah.
like knowing all those things that you can just pick out that fits for that moment, that isn't whatever that negative pattern is that you're trying to replace, that you've got options of things that are nourishing for you.
Yeah, and it's interesting because you mentioned about journaling before. I've done journaling over the years, and I'm doing a little kind of challenge for myself this month by journaling every day and having a prompt, which is working quite, because I've just basically had like a one word prompt and just write just a page, like an A5 page, and not stop until I get to the bottom of the page. And that's just ramblings. I don't even know if it makes sense, but it is just what I have, like a affirmation to start, and then I just kind of like free write, and see what comes up. And I know that like some of the words that you've mentioned about kind of magic and that kind of light within and all of that are kind of themes that have been coming for me this month as well. So it's quite interesting with that kind of like journey for self. Yeah.
Yeah, I think journaling is really powerful, and I've got journals going back for years, and it's really interesting to look back. Sometimes it's quite depressing or funny, but I do think it's good. For me, that actually helped me stop believing my own bullshit, because if I was thinking about my drinking, I'd look back and go, you've been saying this for 3 years now, Janine, that you need to give up the alcohol. I think maybe you should do something about it now.
So you're calling yourself out on that. That's good.
Yeah. Yes, you can't hide from it if it's in black and white there.
Yeah, definitely. And the power of the pen is quite something as well. And I think maybe that's a lost art that's getting lost as well with youngsters today, is that kind of free writing as well, and how powerful that can be.
Yeah, I've got a whole collection of different coloured gel pens for that, because I do love doing a bit. It's quite fun.
See, I'm loving all of this. Your spreadsheets, your to-do lists, your coloured pens.
I'm addicted to stationery, I have to say.
Oh gosh. So would you say then that you have any kind of pearls of wisdom that you'd like to share, and those kind of life lessons that may have popped up, those kind of blessings in disguise?
Yeah, I think something that I really has come home to me just recently, I think since I've been spending more time with women, my change of job has meant I spend more time with women than I used to. And I think that something that I've learned is that nobody has got all their shit together. And it's easy to assume that people have, and particularly in the era that I grew up in, you did. That's kind of the impression that was given. People didn't talk about their struggles. So that I think is quite empowering. Like even those people that you really look up to, they still have bad days. They, like that's, I find that really comforting. This is an oldie but a goodie, but that comparison is the thief of joy. That has really, that's something I've got stuck up on my wall to remind myself, don't get into that, doesn't help. Stay on your own path. And something that I say that is sort of alcohol related, which is if it isn't fun sober, it's not fun drunk either. Because people tend to think, oh yeah, but that's right. No, you've just numbed yourself into thinking that something's fun. It doesn't mean it was fun. So that's something that I feel quite strongly about, and that I would like people to know. And the classic, trust your gut. No, everyone says it, but it's bloody true. It warrants repeating.
Absolutely, and it is. And I think sometimes we kid ourselves into that kind of intuitive thinking and second guess ourselves. But I tend to find that when life is quite busy, we can't really listen to ourselves. So we kind of create in those moments where we have that kind of stillness, quiet. People are scared of being quiet, aren't they? Because they maybe they run and think their thoughts going to run away with them. But it's that kind of inner trust. And I think that kind of journey with alcohol is definitely something that's kind of enabled me to feel that kind of more connected to myself and that sense of surety, and being able to deal with some challenging situations while remaining sober is really powerful. But then you're feeling everything with your emotion, like you're feeling everything then, aren't you? But that helps them get in tune with yourself. I think that's quite powerful.
Yeah, and I think like what you do with meditation is really powerful, isn't it? To create that space to allow the feelings or the thoughts or to get in touch with yourself. That's a really powerful thing to do.
Yeah, yeah, and it's kind of self-affirming and standing within it, and like we just said, that trust in self, and know that you can be your own best friend, and you are able to ultimately trust yourself in the decisions that you make, where alcohol can cloud that sometimes, and give that kind of sense of kind of confident, like if you can feel that kind of, oh yeah, I'll have a drink because I need some confidence, but the confidence is already within you. It's just that kind of self-belief that you can light up, you can instigate a conversation without having the drink. Like you said, if it's not fun sober, that's quite funny, because I mean I love dancing and I will dance at any opportunity, whether it's walking down the supermarket aisle, whether it's in my car. I love it, and I know that since I've been sober and gone to events sober, I'm the first one dancing, I'm the last one off the dance floor, and everyone's like, and you're doing it all sober. I was like, but and then I'm able to feel the music and really get into it. If I'm not feeling it, then I'm not going to dance. But sometimes I've noticed the last time I went out socially, I felt really out of touch, and I was like, this just feels weird. And but then I didn't want to take that too much as a negative to stop me from doing it again. But it made me question maybe the venue that I went to as opposed to the experience. So I know I love dancing, I love music. So if I've got the right ingredients right in the mix, then I'm going to feel more like feel. So it just made me question a little bit, but I don't want to get too much into it. It's quite.
Yeah, I think you've got to give it another chance. But I think, I mean, more power to you. That's amazing that you felt instantly that you could still do it. It took me 3 years sober before I would dance. I was just really self-conscious, and it took me a long while to process that. I mean, now I love dancing too, and now I don't give a shit. People often think, sorry, I have to keep swearing. People often think I'm drunk when I'm completely not. I'm just don't really care what people think of me now.
Yeah. And it's amazing not drinking, because now I remember everything. Well, I say I remember everything, but it's that menopausal brain. So I'm like, I like to think I do remember it, but then sometimes I'm like, oh no. But yeah, it is quite good being that kind of so in tune that you can pick up on different things, and also that sense of enjoyment or not. But yeah, that kind of ultimate belief in self. But
yeah, absolutely,
definitely. So How can people get in touch with you then, Janine, with your kind of support that you offer, and obviously some of those services that you offer to clients, whether that's
Yeah.
anyone else that might be curious about their alcohol use?
So, sorry, you went quiet then, so I wasn't talking with you. Um, so yeah, so you can find me on my web over curious coastal.co.uk. Facebook, same name, Instagram, same name, nice and easy. I'm going to be in January doing like a kind of 6-week course, because that's when everybody is in the, you know, the mindset to do that. And I have got some local support for people that like live in my area. I live in North Essex, and I've got funded support to offer people free coaching in that area. And I hope to get more funding to be able to kind of expand that to a different area, because I'm passionate about helping people, not just the people who can afford to pay, but maybe some people who might need that support but couldn't self-fund.
And that's good. And it is a kind of exploration of alcohol, individuals' alcohol use, but then also reaching that wider community that you mentioned about your networking as well. Is that within the same area that you do your coaching as well?
Yes, yeah. So that's my networking is in my local group. So it's a business network for women. So it's just women supporting women, which I love. But it gives me the opportunity to just like spread the word. And I just think it makes people think, like, they go, oh yeah, Janine was saying about alcohol, and you know, might make people just be a bit more curious and be aware of some things. And I'm very not judgmental. Like, I don't think everybody should stop drinking. I don't think, you know, I think people should have personal choice, but I just think people should be in, have all the information to make that choice.
Yeah, and that sounds great. That is great. And it's that empowering individuals to do that. And I think that's fundamental to that kind of journey to self, that unfunking, and how we can take those steps to unfunk ourselves.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Ginny. It's been a pleasure. And like I say, I will pop your details on to the episode description, and then people will be able
Thank
to
you.
contact you to look into the sessions that you deliver in your local area, but then also online as well. So thank you.
Thank you for having me.